All right, Grace. So the borrower gets pre-approved. Now
Right.
the fun starts. They have to go find a house. So talk to us about what you like to do and what you recommend as far as helping people kind of narrow the search and figure out, like what houses are worth looking at or not
Right.
worth looking at, things along those lines.
So, um, one of the most important things is what I find with a lot of people is that if you're purchasing it as an individual versus you're purchasing it as a couple, there's a lot of different dynamics going on. So, as
Yeah.
an individual, it's very straightforward. So, what I usually like to do is sit down with that person and say, okay, let's talk about what's important and what's not, and let's prioritize that. Like, is a 3 bedroom or a 4 bedroom a deal killer if it's not that? Do you have to have a garage? Do you want land? Do you don't want land?
A fence, master on the main,
Bedroom, bathrooms, how many, do you
those
have to
things.
have 2 bathrooms or 3 bathrooms? Can you live with one? I find that once people start to look at stuff and they haven't done this up front and had like a little checklist, then the outcome can be a lot more successful if you pre plan and prioritize what's important as the highest priority to the lowest priority. Now, that's easy with one person. Now, when you start to talk about a couple, okay, that's very different. And then you have, is this the first home that this couple is buying together? Or is the fifth home that they're buying together? So once you started to buy 3 to 5 homes together, there's a lot more succinctness. But when you're starting to purchase a home for the first time as a new couple, there's a lot of dynamics going on. Like you start to learn a lot about that person. Like, oh, really? That's really important to you? Okay, it wasn't important to me, but if it's really important to you, then I need to make sure it's important to me. So it's
Well, and there
very
could be a big
fascinating.
difference.
Exactly.
So, like for the last house my wife and I bought, I wanted 15 acres, and she wanted a neighborhood with sidewalks.
Well, that's a big difference.
Yeah, we're in a neighborhood with sidewalks.
Well, all I can say is, yes, dear. So, so that's really important is upfront to make some critical decisions, whether it's just yourself or a couple, how long you've been together, if you're in sync, or you really need to spend some time and understand that.
So, what about a buyer who comes to you and it's like,
Hmm.
"Hey, Grace, I found a house. We really love it. We want to go see it," and you don't know like what they want, and they're just like, "We just want to go look at houses,"
Right.
and you're trying to tell them like, "Well, let's figure out what your priorities are." How do you handle that?
So that's a very interesting question. If it's the first property that we're looking together with, I'll usually say, okay, that's fine. Let's go discover. That way, a lot of times you'll learn a lot about the dynamics just going out and looking at that first property and understanding what one person is saying, what the other person is saying, because theory is great, but when you actually start to get out there and beat the pavement, you start to see a lot more dynamics going on than sitting in a coffee shop or at your office talking about things. So I don't have a problem with that. But when it's like the fifth home and there's still a lot of dynamics going on, then I'll say, hey, let's regroup, okay? Let's really think about the areas that are really important to you to look at and the priority of what's important in a house versus what's not important, and those important things that you both can agree to. Because if you don't start to do that after you've looked at 5 houses and they're still far apart on what's important and what's not, then you need to regroup and rehuddle and think through some things.
So, one of the things I've heard people say about realtors in a critical way
Mm-hmm.
is like, oh, realtors are there just to unlock the door, let you in the home,
Oh,
so to
that's,
speak.
well, I
And
mean,
and I've had buyers that I've worked with on the lending side
right,
who have looked at, I'm not kidding, up to 50 homes
right.
with
Well,
with
shame
their
on
real
them.
with the realtor.
Then they have not been having good guidance.
So, what is a realtor's job beyond unlocking a door to go look at potential homes to buy?
Well, it's being guidance and advisor in their area of expertise, which is real estate. There's a lot of different real estate advisors with different levels of experience. Interesting, I have had buyers come to me and said, well, I had a buyer's agent looking at houses with me, but they had only had their license for 6 months, and I just don't feel comfortable them really being on my side to give me good guidance and negotiate the best deal for me. So a good realtor is an advisor. They're also partially a therapist, because that's a big part of what we do is, creating an understanding and the dynamics of the people to make this really work.
It's an emotional decision.
It's
for
a
a lot
very
of
big
people.
emotional decision unless you're just looking at real estate as an investment. And then it's just the numbers. And we do all that. But, as an emotional decision about where you're going to live, typically there's a lot of emotions involved in it. So a realtor is an advisor. They're there for guidance. They're there to look at property with you and show you. I always really try to talk about, okay, see this situation? This is a resale problem. So I always tell them, you may think you're going to be in this house for 10 years or 20 years, but number one, you never know what's going to happen in the world, and you always need to look at a property as resale. Can I resell this property in a reasonable amount of time and not lose money?
Yeah.
So that's huge, huge, huge way to really look at a property and talk to people. So that's the number one thing I always look at. Once we narrow that down and we're down to 2 houses and we're looking at comps and we're evaluating pricing, the next big stage is negotiation, which is the funnest part for me. Because my grandfather taught me a great lesson. There's only one time you make your money.
Okay. And what is that?
It's when you buy. If you buy well, you can
Oh.
sell well. But if you do not buy well, you cannot sell well. So negotiations are crucial to getting a property. Now, even when you're in multiple offers, there's great ways to, work that wording in the offer that keeps you in the game, but doesn't have you pay more than necessary. So we have a lot of great tactics that we use to manage the negotiations, to maximize the returns for the buyers. Now, once you're done with that, you're not done at all. You have inspections, you have appraisals,
Yeah.
you have, a lot of things going on that we're not just door openers. We are advisors on real estate with a lot of aspects of knowledge, from negotiations to understanding appraisals to working through inspection negotiations, how to make things a win-win, and up to actually the closing. I've actually had deals fall apart the day before closing because of some situations that occurred with how the inspection was handled. So we are worth our weight in gold.
Well, how often does the average American make a $300,000 to $800,000 financial decision?
Once or twice.
Not very often.
Right.
And that's that's kind of the range on homes.
Right.
We can find higher and lower, but
Yeah.
in Chattanooga, 300 to 800 is kind of a good.
That's a good
range.
ballpark.
And so having an advisor to help you with that can really save you.
Oh, totally. I've seen situations where some people have bought in a house through FaceTime, looked at the inspection, and their realtor suggested that there really wasn't any big things that needed to be handled. And then I'm coming into the picture 2 or 3 years later and trying to list that home and understanding how they got to where they're at and some things that probably were overlooked when they bought the home that shouldn't have been, that should have been negotiated, that weren't. And now they're in a situation where they're not upside down, but they're not going to make the return that they thought they were going to make because there were things that were overlooked that should have been negotiated during an inspection that weren't.
Yeah. I've seen that happen a lot of times.
A lot of times.
Here's a favorite story. A friend of mine bought a house and they said, "Isn't there a train around here?" And the realtor said, "No, there's no trains around here. That's a dead track. It's not used anymore." Well, the realtor was wrong. And they didn't think much of it because they were like, "We can live with this." But when it came time to sell, what did people complain about? And
The railroad
list?
tracks. Yeah.
Over and over again.
Yeah.
And it made the property harder to sell.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.